Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Magical Day Radio, the happiest show on the air. Here are your hosts, Don Short and Jerry Cornell.
Good evening and welcome to Magical Day Radio. This is Dawn and I'm here with my co-host Jerry Cornell of Theme Parkology. Hi Jerry.
Hello. How you doing?
Doing good. Just super excited to do show number 2 with our very first guest.
Yes, I'm excited too. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be great stories, great time, and hopefully a lot of laughter.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited. Well, let's bring him on. You guys, tonight we've got a really special guest, our very first guest ever on Magical Day Radio. Joining us is freelance writer and director of film and television, Mr. Kirk R. Thatcher. Hi, Kirk.
Hey, guys. Hi. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored.
Thank you. It's our honor to have you with us, so thank you so much.
Sure. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, Kirk, I understand that you have some fantastic stories to share with us regarding the Muppets. Perhaps you can share them with us?
Yeah, well, what I thought I'd do, because I've done a lot of interviews about working on Star Trek and Star Wars, and you can see that in podcasts or read interviews. What I've never talked about, particularly about Muppets, which obviously are related to Disney now since they've owned them for the last 12 or so years, is Muppet projects I've worked on that never came to fruition, usually scripts. I've written a number of scripts with Jim Lewis primarily. Well, a couple on my own, but mainly with Jim Lewis, who's the other kind of in-house Muppet writer, or the only in-house Muppet writer. I have not been since 2000. But a bunch of projects that people may or may not have heard about, but I thought it would be fun because just you never read them, you never see them, and there's some fun stuff we did that for various reasons never got made.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to hear about this. I love the Muppets. I get to share them with my granddaughters, which is super cool. It's one of those things that you get to pass on. So.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of what's fun about them is they're, I guess in the industry they call it a 4-quadrant. Like Disney programs, they try to appeal to everybody, or Pixar shows, and everybody likes them. But a show that actually became a video game, it was going to be a TV special, and it became Muppet Haunted House, which is a video game. But it was originally, I love Halloween. I grew up, in fact, one of the reasons is the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, so bringing it back full circle.
Yeah.
I've always loved that, and I've always loved Halloween. I was a kid who made myself up every year from about the time I was 8 till I was about probably 20. In fact, that's why I went into creature making. So I always wanted to do the Muppets in a Halloween kind of, special or movie, something about creatures and ghosts and all that. So it started as a TV special, and the concept was that Bunsen Honeydew's uncle had passed away, and he lived in this castle out in Transylvania. Again, I think I can talk a lot about this one because it became a video game. And so the Muppets were all going to go to Hawaii for a vacation, and Bunsen and Beaker were just going to go off by themselves, and they felt bad for them. They said, look, Kermit kind of rallies everybody. He goes, well, come on, we'll just go and we'll be with Bunsen in his moment of his time of need, and then after we're there for a few days to get everything settled, we'll all go on as expected to Hawaii. So they go to this creepy old castle in Transylvania, and it turns out his uncle was a mad scientist, as Bunsen carried on the tradition. And they met a butler there named Surly, and that was one of the first jokes. Is like, I'm Surly. We go, yes, no, but what's your name? And what's funny about a lot of this stuff is a lot of these ideas ended up in the Disney Haunted House movie with Eddie Murphy. Ours was written beforehand, and Disney was privy to it. And I'm not saying they took our ideas, but there are a lot of very strong similarities. The first one being the butler. And you find out at the end that the butler is a ghost, but you don't know. So they meet him, and they try and find what happened to Dr. Honeydew, because he just disappeared, and so he'd been gone for 8 years or 7 years, and so the castle had defaulted in the will to his nephew Bunsen, who was the last living relative. And so what happens over the course of the special is that the Muppets start disappearing and turning into monsters.
Wow.
And so Kermit becomes Frankenstein, basically a flat-topped green version of Frankenstein. Miss Piggy becomes the bride of Frankenstein. Wow. Gonzo, one of my favorites, because we wanted to keep it, not blood or gore or anything. Gonzo became Nosferatu, the vampire of sweat. And so he would stick his nose in people's armpits and sniff deeply, and that's what would give him life. It was weird and creepy, but it wasn't necessarily disgusting. Well, it wasn't bloody and disgusting. Rizzo
we need to fund this film.
Well, what's funny is it became this bizarre video game. And so a few of the Muppets were left who were not changed. Fozzie became a werebear, which was funny. And we kind of were making fun of the old Abbott and Costello movies with, panels that move. And what you come to find out is that Dr. Honeydew, his uncle, I forgot his name. It wasn't Bunsen, but it was like, whatever, I can't recall. But he was trying to distill pure goodness as like a Dr. Jekyll formula. You could give it to anybody. And what happened was the side effect, the byproduct was pure evil. And he actually accidentally spilled it on himself and became like a mad, crazed scientist. And he'd been going down and causing problems, like the Phantom of the Opera. So there'd been this Phantom character, and the butler, Surly, was trying to help the guys find him. And what you realize was he was the one giving this potion to the this evil Dr. Honeydew, was giving it to everybody because he wanted to make them evil also. So Surly the butler, I think Clifford, Kermit's nephew Robin, and a couple other Muppets went about trying to, first they discovered Dr. Honeydew and changed him back, and they found his notebook in a secret laboratory. And then they spend the rest of it trying to get everyone back and save them before midnight or whatever the clock was. But it was just really fun and silly, and we got to turn the Muppets into monsters, which was the joy.
That sounds like a fantastic film.
Well, thank you. It started as a special, and they liked it, and then we're going to do it as a movie, so we kind of fleshed it out. And then different executives took over and handed off the idea of a Muppet. This idea has like 4 variations. It then went over to a couple other writers, and they turned into more of a parody of, I wasn't involved in this part. It was more of a parody of a horror movie, like a Freddy Krueger kind of thing. And that script was written, and then everyone decided, well, that's too scary. It was too scary because you're parodying, and also the scary movie parody movies were kind of doing that. So it came back to us, and we pitched to Jim Lewis and I. We said, well, let's do something more in the line of Ghostbusters. Let's do an afterlife movie.
Nice.
And then everyone's like, well, how are you gonna do that? I mean, you have to kill the Muppets if they're gonna be ghosts. And I said, yeah, we'll figure it out. So we came up with this scheme that they ended up in this big haunted house. And I think it was, an inheritance. But this was in the South. It was an antebellum manor house. And there was a portrait. Again, this was very much used. This idea was in the Disney Haunted House movie. Again, these were written before the Eddie Murphy one.
Right.
There was a portrait on the wall that looked like Miss Piggy.
Huh.
And, but, it was someone from the 1700s or the 1800s. And it was the owner of the house. He was a general, I think, in the sub. And this was the love of his life, and he had this portrait painted of her. But he had died, and the house had gone on to heirs. And I can't remember exactly how the Muppets ended up in it. But so they're all looking around and just kind of checking out this big house. And a bookcase falls on like 6 of them, but not Miss Piggy. And so they turn into ghosts. And what you find out is the spirit of the owner of the house has killed them and made them into ghosts, and he's using their energy to become human again because he's seen Miss Piggy and has realized that he has to have her because it's the reincarnation. It's like, again, the Eddie Murphy thing of his long lost love. And so he has taken the Muppets. He doesn't really kill them, but the bookcase thing, he takes their life energy and becomes human. And so then it's 2 parallel stories. So it's this ghost now looking like a dapper, it was sort of like a Clark Gable type. He was a Southern gentleman, and it was very, very charming. And he just buttered up Miss Piggy left and right. And so she thinks Kermit has run off and left him because she doesn't know where he is. And so Kermit and whoever was with him, again, it was like 5 or 6 of the core Muppets, like Fozzie and Gonzo and probably Bunsen and Beaker, they become ghosts, and sort of like Beetlejuice, they go towards the light, and they end up in this waiting room where they're told, well, you have to go to ghost school because your bodies are still there, and you were killed by nefarious means. You have to learn how to haunt. So they were at haunting school, which was just very silly. And it was a fun poke at the afterlife. So we had They were in ghost school, which was really silly.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun, and they learned how to do all these crazy things. Again, they're like Beetlejuice a little bit.
Right.
Yes.
And so, meanwhile, this general, I guess I forget, we had a ridiculous name like Jackson Socks or something. He was wooing Miss Piggy with some things like if he could stay, and they find out if he can stay human for 48 hours or whatever the clock was, then he would be able to stay human for the rest of his life, and the Muppets would stay ghosts. So they have to now, with their haunting training, go back and somehow contact Miss Piggy and use their, again, a little bit like in Ghost, too, with Patrick Swayze, learn how to manipulate things in the real world to get their message across of what had happened and get rescued, all the while, bringing the villain back into his ghostly form. So that was really fun. There was idiot Ghostbusters, because Miss Piggy and this Jello now living in his mansion, or he wants to have her move into his beautiful manor house, and she's very upset that it has left her, and so he's trying to console her and say, "We can stay here in my beautiful manor house." Meanwhile, our guys are haunting it and trying to get her attention. Of course, she's oblivious, and they're not very good at haunting. But finally, they make enough of an impression, and we think, as the audience, this is somewhere near the end of the second act, beginning of the third act, that they've gotten through to her, and she just thinks the place is haunted, so she calls Ghostbusters. And so we make fun of Ghostbusters and a little bit of fun of Poltergeist. We just like to parody things. So I think we had a little person, calling the spirits forth, and these idiot brothers were sort of like the Ghostbusters.
Oh, no.
And so they finally catch the ghost, and it's Kermit, and he, reveals what's happened to Miss Piggy, and she realizes that the guy who's been romancing her is a villain, and they thwart him and send him back to the land of the unliving, and our heroes get unsquished from underneath they lift up the bookcase, and then there's some ritual or something they do. Again, there was a clock and some, jiggery pokery and hocus pocus, but they got back into their body. And that was the big thing that everyone was worried about. It's like, you have to kill them. I said, yeah, but it's like a funny kill. It's not body, it's not dead bodies that are under the bookcase. So I think I solved that problem. It was a fun script. And I worked with Jim on that for probably a year or so. Then, that's like the third version. Because there were two versions of there was the television special, and then that became a feature because they said the budget was big and they liked it. And then it went to someone else, so that was version 2 or 3, and then it came back to us for this Ghostbusters version, and then it went back to a TV special. This was now after Disney had purchased the Muppets, and that was involving the Muppet Theater and the Muppet Monsters. We wanted to do something, since we've done Ghosts and we've done kind of the Ghostbusters things, and we've done the classic movie monsters, we said, well, what's left? So we were playing around the idea of the Muppet Monsters, like Uncle Tedley and those guys that you don't see very often, and that they had wanted to. So it was a TV Halloween special involving them. So that was another version, and then 2 other writers came in and sort of cobbled together something between that and the original thing we'd written. It was the Muppets went back, we're going to Transylvania. So anyway, it's an idea that someday I hope we can do. I can write or co-write and direct, because I just think the Muppets lend themselves to Halloween fun, whatever it is. So that's something nobody really knows about. And I thought, again, since this is
any one of those variations would be fantastic, and that's just a perfect example of how sometimes a good story just doesn't get made. But I'd vote for it and watch it in a heartbeat.
Me too.
Got a Kickstarter going. I think I'll
be the first one to donate.
And that's the thing. I mean, Hollywood and television are filled with projects that you go, why didn't that get made? That sounded awesome. Something I worked on. This has been written about a little bit with the Henson Company back in the 90s. Was a show about a giant cockroach. This is not Muppets. This was just a Henson show. It was a very large cockroach. A guy who gets an apartment in New York, and he gets it for free, and it's a nice place, but it's an old building, and he doesn't know why he gets it for free. And it turns out it's just infested with roaches. So he cobbles together all this stuff and makes a roach bomb, kind of a homemade one, and bombs the place, and then comes back like 2 days later. It seems to be clear, but then these three roaches mutated into giant cockroaches the size of cats, basically, or
oh my god,
sort of the frog size. And it was all about a guy who had to live with three roaches with various personalities, and it was just there was something made with Jerry O'Connell called Joe's Apartment that had realistic roaches in it and how they kind of helped him, and it was a love story. And I know that came out, and there's no new ideas, but that was a fun show. And I designed the maquettes, what they would look like, and it was based on a puppet I did for the Jim Henson Hour called Jacques Roach that Steve Whitmire did. And the idea was a famous French chef who happened to be a cockroach. And we liked the idea of a cockroach, kind of the fun you could have with that. So we grew into the show idea, which we actually sold to NBC, but then some deal could not be made. I forgot what the deal was. I wasn't involved with that. But I remember pitching to NBC to Warren Littlefield, who was the head, and I was not only pitching as one of the writers, I was actually puppeteering the cockroach in the meeting. So I've never told this story. You guys are getting a lot of good stuff. Until I started talking, I'd forgotten that. So I'm in there because we knew that Alf had won their pitch when the guy who created him actually brought Alf into the meeting and just made everyone laugh, and they sold it by just having the character there. So I did this kind of cockroach character, and I'm not a puppeteer. I do improv, and I can wiggle the head around and do the mouth. Right. But they said, well, you got these characters in your head, and you can do the voices. So I basically coughed and spit on Warren Littlefield as a cockroach and told him how great the show would be. We had some jokes planned before, but that was fun. But that's something that nobody's.
That's a fantastic idea.
I don't know. It's a crazy idea. Having done dinosaurs, I know you can sell crazy ideas.
Well, you know what? Dinosaur was one of my all-time favorites growing up. I love that show.
Oh, thank you.
And I believe you worked on it, right?
I did help create it, yeah. It was Jim Henson and I were working on it right before he passed away. I was doing designs, and he and I were brainstorming with his assistant, Alex Rockwell. So it was the three of us. We'd all talk about ideas, she'd write them down, and then I'd do some drawings, and we'd get together. We'd done that a couple times. And in fact, the last time I ever saw Jim was we had lunch, and we went over dinosaur design characters like the second round. I just start out by just drawing a bunch of stuff, and then he looks at it and goes, oh, I like that. So it was the second round of going, well, the dad could look like this, and the mom could look like this. And just playing with the concept of taking that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle technology that they had gotten down really well with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies and saying, how can we do dinosaurs but as people in suits, but make them look, more like dinosaurs, but obviously taking a lot of leeway with it. And so then sadly Jim passed away, but the company pitched it to ABC. Michael Jacobs came on. They're getting ahead a little bit. Michael Jacobs came on with his writing partner, Bob Young. And so we met with them, and the kind of the four of us, Alex, Jim's assistant and kind of development person, and Bob and Michael and myself hashed out what the show would be. And I went off and started doing, very detailed character designs as we kind of described what the family would look like. And I remember we pitched it to ABC when Bob Iger was running it, and Stu Bloomberg was the exec, or one of the execs there, and Martin Baker was the producer for the Henson Company, at the time. And we had this great pitch. Michael Jacobs is great in the room. He's very funny, and he and Bob did this great presentation, and I held up the drawings and discussed the characters and how they would be done and what they would look like. And Brian Henson was there describing the technology and how we do the show. And you could just tell when a pitch goes well. I remember walking out and looking at Martin Baker, and we were going, holy cow, what if they actually buy it?
Wow.
So it's a huge undertaking. 7 major characters and 4 extra characters and kind of our utility players that we turned, and then 5 or 6 puppets. And as the show progressed, we had a brontosaurus that was just a giant long head and a neck that would come in through the window. And the Ninja Turtle movies were just 4 turtles, and this was a whole world. In the human world. Yeah, so it was a big undertaking, but we pulled it off. So after you do that, you think, okay, well, if you pull that off, you can kind of do anything. And that is and was the great thing about the Henson Company, is that, Jim and then Brian and Lisa carrying on the tradition is you can imagine it, we can figure out how to make it as goofy or as funny or as weird as it may seem. It is and was a great place to work, in that whatever your nutty idea is, you could take it to them, and if we all agree this is something we could do, you can figure out how to do it. So let's see, back to ideas, Muppet shows or Henson shows that never got made. Well, the near and dear to my heart. I love using the Muppets as sort of a kind of like Monty Python, where you have they're a team and they do different genre pictures, like we did in the 90s. Brian directed both Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island, and I just love the idea of putting them in a genre picture. Like I wanted to do a big pirate picture. We talked about doing a Western, we talked about doing, and I think all of these would be great, a spy movie. I know somebody wrote a Muppet James Bond parody with Kermit as sort of a James Bond type of guy. And I think all of these are great ideas to do, genre pictures with the Muppets. And so after the success of Muppet Treasure Island, I said, we were working on the Haunted House one, and I said, let's do a sci-fi parody. I mean, science fiction just seems right with all the Star Trek, Star Wars movies, which I had worked on. So I had a good pedigree for it. So I went off and wrote an outline and worked with Jerry Jewell, gave me notes on it, and Brian at the time. And then went off and wrote a script, and it was just a ridiculous... It was called Muppets in Space.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Not Muppets from Space. It's funny, that story is that I wrote Muppets in Space, which starts out with pigs in space, and then a spaceship crashes through the Pigs in Space logo, and the new letters follow and saying Muppets in Space, and the Pigs in Space ship gets hurled out into to the intergalactic nothingness, and they're like, what happened? That was our movie. But it took place in the future. I remember it opened in Los San Fran Diego, and it was basically a metropolis that spread the entire west coast of California from basically Tijuana to about Napa. And it was one giant city, and the Muppets were working there. It's like 300 years in the future. They were working in a factory, just as like janitors, and they hated their lives. They were yelled at by their boss, and they saw an ad on the radio. There's a holographic radio ad saying, join the Intergalactic Space Federation, basically like join the Army, but it was the Space Army, and visit, exciting planets and learn new skills. And Kermit sort of rallied the troops like, this would be a great idea. We should do this, guys. We're going nowhere. And you find out that Kermit at Fozzie had like a variety act, that they'd been to Mars and the moon, sort of like a futuristic version of vaudeville. And that hadn't worked out for them. So they were all there kind of working this drudgery job at this horrible factory that they're all feeling very, depersonalized and degraded. So they all decide they're going to go sign up for the Galactic Federation. And so we go through this really funny about 10-page scene of them in training, learning how to fight in zero-G and learning how to build, transport someone from one, side of the room to the other. And of course, there's all sorts of screw-ups. But one thing becomes really clear. Miss Piggy is so good, she goes into officer training. She just really does well with yelling at people and telling them how to behave and organizing them, where the rest of them are kind of goofballs. So she goes off into officer training, and the rest of them graduate as basically, privates, third-class janitors. But they get assigned to basically the Enterprise, but we call it the Impressive, the SS.
I love that.
And it's again a parody of Star Trek, and they go on the ship, and there's a captain character, and they're there in the beginning. The ship is being launched for its native voyage, and they're essentially cleaning up the construction detritus from the making of the ship, and they're on the bridge when the ship hits light speed, and Kermit ends up Gonzo ends up in the captain's lap spilling a bucket of deck washing water or whatever, and so they're all goof ups, and the ship's first the Impressive's first task is there's an alien ship, an enormous alien ship the size of 20 of the Federation ships, hurtling towards the Earth, and they haven't been able to contact it. So the Impressive is the new battleship it's sent out to rejoinder this, or come up on this alien vessel and try to either make contact with it or ultimately at least stop it from whatever its purpose is, because it's heading towards the Earth. So they get there, and there's no contact. There's nothing. They can't make any. Nobody's responding, and so the captain's ready to just blow it up. It's like put all our lasers and photon torpedoes, whatever, and blow it out of space, because it's obviously a threat. And Kermit, who's there on the deck cleaning up the mess they made, kind of suggests, well, maybe they don't understand us, or maybe it's very Kermit. Well, maybe we can make friends with them. Maybe you should just send someone over, and we could find out that what they really want. I mean, it seems silly just to shoot first and ask questions later. And so the captain, listen, that's a great idea. I volunteer all you guys, because they are such goofballs. So So it's Kermit and Fozzie and Gonzo, I think, and Rizzo. And then Bunsen and Beaker are two robots. They're Bunsen and Beaker. And so they're like just two goofy robots, science officer robots. So all of them get beamed aboard the ship, which is this weird alien ship. And they find what looks to be the bridge. But it's very strange. Like, you can't even, it's so alien, you're not sure what does what. And so they're kind of, starting to push buttons and things, and Kermit's trying to get them not to. One of the first things that, a bunch of silly things happen. That was kind of one of the plot points, was they push one button and suddenly they're all wearing Groucho glasses, 20 years. They push another button and bubbles come down from the ceiling. Love it. Push another button and they all are talking backwards. So they don't know. This just seems like a bunch of gags. But then they push another button and suddenly the ship gears up and kind of all these lights go on, and we cut back to the Impressive. And they're like, Captain, and the ship's showing a huge energy surge, and the captain's like, well, okay, it's obviously arming itself, get ready to blow it up. So they contact Kermit. The guys say, look, we're going to destroy. You better get off there. And Kermit's like, no, we don't know what it is. And the captain's like, sorry, guys, you're just going to have to give your lives. And so the Impressive, revs up its destructo ray. And as soon as they're about to basically blow the ship, blow a hole in it, the ship just explodes into light speed and takes off and is gone. So now our guys are hurtling through space, not knowing where they're going. The Impressive is like, well, they've just disappeared, Captain. They've shot off into light speed. We don't know where. So they can't follow them, and they just figure, oh, well, I guess that's it.
Wow. Sign me up. I want to be on that spaceship.
So meanwhile, the Muppets find they push another button, and it basically looks like a toaster oven pops up, or a freezer kind of device pops up, and there's a green, looks like a meatloaf in it, but it's frozen. And Rizzo, of course, is starving, and so he hits another button and starts to warm it up, and he goes, oh, it's a snack. And Kermit's like, don't touch it, just stop touching things. And Rizzo, they go off to explore a little more, and they come back, and Rizzo's eating it, whatever it was, and Kermit's like, oh, told you. He's like, I'm sorry, it looked delicious, and I'm starving, and who knows, we don't know where we're heading. That might be the only food we have. So Kermit just, he can't control this band of goofballs. They encounter, there's one other button they press to try and stop the ship, and what happens is they realize they're sent back in time 30 seconds. So what you see is they push this button, and then suddenly they're saying, oh, what should we do? Let's try pushing this button. And they do it like 4 times and keep getting sent back to, oh, let's see, we should push this button. Oh, let's see, we should, and finally one goes, do you get the feeling we've done this before? So they realize that button, can send you back 30 seconds. It makes about as much sense as everything else. Is obviously a good...
Clever. That's very clever.
It's the same gag that they used in Galaxy Quest. That was right. Again, this script was written. I wrote this before Galaxy Quest came out, so I know I didn't steal from them. I know Jeffrey Katzenberg was involved with that, and I know he'd read our script, so I don't know if that got past him. It's also science fiction tropes, so it's the same waters. Anyway, it goes on and on. They ultimately find out that this ship is this mothership, and it had the leader of this entire other galaxy, and that this sort of like a Federation, but in the Bizarro universe, had been waiting for the return of their chosen one. So the ship it shoots along for a couple days. They end up in a complete different galaxy, and they're greeted by this huge flotilla of alien ships, and they are addressed on the view screen, and they see Kermit, and these aliens are like, the chosen one. His name was like the Great Shazoo or something. And they were very excited to see him because they'd been waiting for a millennia for him to arrive on his giant, destructive battleship that will lead them on to victory throughout the universe. And Kermit's like, no, that's not me. I'm sorry, you guys have made a mistake. You go, but you're green and you're the size one. What they quickly realize is Rizzo ate the chosen one. Who'd been frozen in hypersleep. You've been sent one end of the universe to the other in hypersleep, so he couldn't age, and Rizzo had eaten him. My God! So Kermit can't really explain that to them when he turns out it's sort of their messiah, and they're all waiting for the chosen one because he's going to lead them for the great welcoming. So Kermit's like, well, what if I told you I wasn't the great chosen one? They said, well, we'd have to blow you up. He said, because anyone, if you're not the chosen one, it's sort of like if you meet the Buddha on the road, blow him up. If you're not the chosen one and you appear to be him, then you should be destroyed because you're obviously an imposter. And so Kermit doesn't, is in a quandary, so he lies, which he doesn't want to do, but his friends tell him that's the better option, at least till they can figure this out. So it sort of becomes a man who would be king. Kermit is welcome with his friends as the leader of this entire galaxy of bizarre aliens whose greatest joy in life is to explode with delight, literally blow up, which is a classic Muppet gag. So it just gets worse and worse, and finally Kermit can't take it, and he admits to them, I lied to you, and so they're thrown in the dungeon where they meet this big alien. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. They meet this big, horrible creature with, like Alien from the movie Alien, has like two mouths and this mouth that extends with its teeth. And so you think it's going to eat them. It lurks in the dark in this dungeon. They're like, oh my gosh, this thing calls up, and they're like, oh no. And it comes up to them, and it's drooling. This little mouth comes forward. And I always want to do this. And then it speaks in this tiny little voice because the little mouth is tiny. Hey, you guys, what are you doing? what got you sent in here? And so it's really friendly, happy alien that looks horrifying.
I love that so much.
Tiny little mouth. And they explain what has happened. He's like, oh, wow, that's bad. Well, I guess we're going to be friends for a long time. And then they're like, you're not going to eat us? He's like, oh, no, I don't eat living things. I'm a carrion eater. And if they don't feed you, I figure we got about 2 weeks. So it doesn't, first they think they found a friend, and then it doesn't, and then it gets worse. And so they realize if they don't lie, if Kermit doesn't lie and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, that they will be either starved to death and eaten by this creature or killed. So he calls his jailers and said, look, I misunderstood. I am the Great Shazoo. And because they say, look, what they want to do is you're supposed to lead them on the Great Welcoming. That sounds really nice and friendly. How bad could it be? So Kermit,
how bad could it be, right?
So he tells them, I'm sorry, there's a misinformation. I am the Great Shazoo, and I am here to lead you on the Great Welcoming. His excuse was his brain hadn't thawed out yet from the deep freeze.
Nice.
They said, great. Now we're going to gather all those ships from across our galaxy, and we're going to start the Great Welcoming. And the Kermit's like, that great. It's a celebration. And there's, I remember we had some alien, very much like Star Trek. There was the green slave girls of Orion that Captain Kirk kind of ogled, or I think Captain Pike did in the pilot. And it looked like Miss Piggy, if Miss Piggy were green, wearing a bathing suit, and she's dancing for Kermit, and he's getting quite excited. And this is like the famous courtesan who will be the constant companion of the Great Shazoo. And Kermit's like, the guys are like, Kermit, this isn't so bad. Of course, then she opens her mouth and it's filled with like tons of shark teeth, and she has this hideous laugh, and so it's just nothing gets better. And so Kermit's like, all right, enough celebrating. Let's go on the Great Welcoming. That sounds good. And they're like, great, it's time to do it. And all the ships are in line. And they go, who do you want to welcome first? And he says, well, I would like to welcome Earth. That's where we're from. And, we'd like to take you there. Meanwhile, one of the things that's happened, kind of a B story, is Fozzie has introduced them to the concept of humor because he's been telling his jokes. And at first they don't really get it because they don't understand humor or silliness. In fact, that's why their greatest joy is to explode or blow things up. They think that's awesome. But Fozzie teaches them about humor and laughter, and they think that's great. And so that not only does Shazoo shared with them, is going to give them a great welcome, but Fozzie is introduced to comedy and laughter. So very, on kind of point with the Muppets. And so what Kermit says, we want to go to Earth, and, we'll tell you where it is, or, our Bunsen and Beaker can help triangulate it. And they say, great, it's going to be, a few days of our hypergalactic speed, but the big ship you came in is the great mothership, and then we'll welcome Earth, and we'll go around the galaxy welcoming planets. And great, and it sounds fantastic. They're going to get a free ride home, and Kermit will be a hero. And, another thing that was another story going on was that the Federation was fighting the evil Snardians, which are sort of like alligator aliens. That was sort of the Klingons that you learn about. The Snardian threat was always around. And so that was one of the plot points. Sorry, I just remember this, because I haven't even read the script in about 15 years. So when Impressive found this alien ship, they thought it was a Snardian trap. So that's why they're going to blow it up, because, these Snardians are bad guys. So anyway, they're going to go to Earth and do the welcoming, and then Kermit finds out as soon as the ship's launched to go to Earth that the Great Welcoming means to blow up a planet. And Kermit's like, wait, what? And they're like, yes, our greatest joy is to blow things up. So the greatest honor we can bestow upon a planet is to blow them up, in honor of the great, in your honor. And he's like, oh, no, wait, that's not what I meant. And they're like, but if you didn't mean that, then you're not the Great Shazoo. We have to kill you. So, again, stuck in this hard place. And they ultimately, again, I'm compressing a little bit, they end up heading back to Earth, and there's they're met by the Snardian fleet, which they easily dispatch of, because the Snardians don't know there. They end up facing off with Earth, and then the Federation fleet is now, and guess who's the captain or the admiral of the entire fleet is now Miss Piggy. We cut back to her a few times here, going up the ladder to the admiral. So now it's Kermit and this giant alien flotilla versus Miss Piggy, who's the admiral of the Federation fleet. Kermit's trying to, convey his message to her, like this is not what he wants, but he can't be shown to be lying to the aliens that kill him and his friends. And meanwhile, Fozzie's trying to break the tension by telling all these jokes, and everyone's laughing, so it's very surreal. They're about to blow up the Earth. All their weapons are aimed at Earth, and Kermit tells Piggy, don't worry, don't fire on us, I've got this. And then he ultimately blows up the Earth. And everyone's completely shocked, not the least Kermit. So all the aliens are rejoicing, and Miss Piggy's ready, getting the ships to all the Federation fleet is like, all right, well, I can't, she's just devastated. They blow up the Earth. So they're getting, all the ships are armed with their photon torpedoes. And it looks like, oh my gosh, how's this going to end? And the aliens are like, well, that's great. We blew up the Earth. Now what? Now where do we go? And Kermit's sad. They don't understand. They said, well, you killed the Earth. That's why you're sad. Well, that's where we're from. That's where all this humor you love came from. Wait, humor came from Earth. Yes, humans, when we're not feeling good, we use humor. It makes us feel better. Wait, we love humor. We don't want humor to go away. And Kermit said, well, it's too late. You blew up the Earth, you idiots. And meanwhile, Piggy's ready to destroy them all. And then I forget if it's Kermit or Bunsen or someone remembers that button. And it's very similar to Galaxy Quest. Runs, hits the button, and they're back just before the button is pushed to destroy the Earth. And because I wrote it, we destroy it 3 times before they figure out. They keep doing it, going back in time, but they finally, Kermit stops them and says, and they're like, this is, we're like, yeah. And so then they save, and then Kermit, Piggy has not blown up or, aiming at the ship anymore, the alien fleet, because the Earth isn't blown up. And ultimately, it ends with Kermit becoming the admiral or the captain of a ship with his guys in the crew because they saved the Earth, and Piggy's the president of the Galactic Federation. And it was very silly. There was tons of Star Wars and Star Trek parodies and references, but if I enumerated all of them, it would take probably about an hour and a half, which is as long as the movie was.
Amazing.
That was really fun, and actually Disney was going to make it. And it was right at the time when Sony had their distribution deal changed from Disney to Sony, because Treasure Island and Christmas Carol were done with Disney, and so then Sony took over, and Jerry Jewell was on his own writing a very different kind of script about Gonzo realizing he was an alien. And it was very small, just complete opposite. It was small and intimate. It basically took place all in the Muppets boarding house, and it was a very sweet film. And I like kind of the bigger, broader comedy, and I love Jerry, and he was very, very helpful in giving me notes on my script. But Sony they thought this movie sounded too expensive, and they wanted, I think, their first Muppet movie to be maybe a bit smaller and a bit sweeter and get back to more kind of a warmer, fuzzier thing. And so they developed Jerry's script, but they developed it a lot. I think 18 or 19 writers worked on it. But one thing that happened when Gonzo finds out he's an alien, and if I don't think I'm spoiling it for anybody, but if you haven't seen it, just forget I said that. Because a bunch of aliens visit at the end, they were going to call it Muppets in Space. I said, well, that's a complete lie. They were going to just take my title because they own it. I can't do anything with it. I said, but that's disingenuous. They're not Muppets in Space. No, people think it's a space picture. I said, but you call it Muppets from Space. They went, okay, great, we'll call it that. I said, but then you give away the ending of your movie.
Right. Well, after we go fund the haunted one, we need to go fund this.
I said, it'd be like calling X-Files, Mulder's Alien. You can't call it that. But anyway, they chose the title, and they made Muppets Muppets from Space instead. Yeah, but that's actually, it was good for me because I did some rewrites on the script, and it was my first job in the Directors Guild. I did second unit on it, and got to got my Directors Guild card from that movie. So either way, it worked out for me. But what happened now, these movies, I felt okay pitching or explaining to you guys and sharing them because when Disney bought the Muppets, these movies were property of the Henson Company, and Disney couldn't make them without buying them from the Hensons, and I guess they didn't want to do that. And they've taken them up in a different direction. So maybe someone will hear this and go, hey, those are clever, we should do more of that. But yeah, so that's what I thought I would share with you guys.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are both great stories. I'd love to see both.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are just saying that.
No. I got my wallet out. That's how serious I am about seeing this. Where do I, who do I give my credit card number to?
We just need 5 million people to give us $20.
That's it. That's not a lot. That's not a lot.
How many listeners do you guys have? You got at least a couple million, right? So if they tell friends. The other thing that's fun is I got to work because you guys are Disney. So all those were done while they had a development deal with ABC and Disney. So it was somewhat on track. But then I got to shoot a bunch of Muppet stuff at the Disney theme park, which was really fun. I did a big Muppet commercial a few years ago and got to shoot at Disneyland after hours for about 8 days. So there's a lot of fun things I'm sure people would get a kick out of hearing. But do you guys have questions about any of that or anything else? Because I could talk about that stuff.
Yeah, actually, I have a question. Do we have time, Don?
Yeah, I got another 15 minutes. If you do.
Okay. The show's been taken over by Kirk. Actually, Kirk, I'd like to know about your work and affiliation with Turkey Hollow, which is just brilliant. It's just fantastic.
Thank you so much. Well, that's a great story, how it came about. Jim and Jerry Jewell, people I both worked with, I wrote Muppet Treasure Island with Jerry Jewell. I don't know if I said that earlier, and he was one of the original people Jim hired back when Jerry was a puppeteer before he became the writer on the Muppet Show, and he won an Emmy for that. Jim and Jerry were writing special ideas, and so they came up with one. Originally, they were going to have a TV special. Lisa Henson told me this because I didn't know this. For every holiday, they were going to have literally like a Groundhog's Day, a 4th of July, a Halloween, a Thanksgiving, and a Christmas special, and an Easter one, too. So they were just going to do hour-long kind of Muppet puppet musical, not Muppets, classic Muppets, because they didn't exist yet. But these specials, like Hey Cinderella, was one that they did, and the Muppet Musicians of Bremen was another one they did. So this was along those lines, but it was the Thanksgiving special. And Jim and Jerry wrote about an 8 to 10 page outline, kind of outlining the story, and it was called The Magical Musical Monsters of Turkey Hollow. And it was supposed to be an hour-long special with music and songs. And these creatures, this was done before Sesame Street, so the puppets, if you Google Turkey Hollow or Magical Musical Monsters of Turkey Hollow, you probably see some pictures that Jim did with Don Saleen and probably Jane. This was back in 1967, before Sesame Street. They made these more creature-like Muppets, essentially like if you imagine the Muppet monsters from Sesame Street, but with like more realistic taxidermy eyes. I mean, they still weren't realistic. They were very Muppety with funny heads and shapes. And they built these creatures, and what they wanted to do was shoot them in the real world, which they had not done at this point. They've been shooting everything on stage, just very storybook kind of sets. And so there's a bunch of pictures of Lisa Henson, when I think she's like 6, and Cheryl when she's 4, or they might even be younger. They might be 5 and 3, with these creatures just outside in the forest, outside Jim's house back in on the East Coast. And so they built these puppets, and the story was about a Thanksgiving story about a family that goes on. It's a dad and his 2 kids go on vacation to visit their aunt, who's this eccentric gal that lives out on a farm. And she is an animal rights activist, and there's this crazy neighbor who has a turkey farmer, and she thinks he's, he's kind of a loudmouth, cranky old jerk. And he wants to get Aunt Cly's farm. Her name is Aunt Cly. Anyway, so there's this outline that they mentioned whether music would fit into it and songs. And so they had been lost. And they remember the pictures, and the puppets actually were still around. They're literally, all of this was crammed in the back of a file drawer. They were in a drawer at the workshop. And it had sort of been forgotten. So when they were the archivists were going through, this was about 2009, 2010, they found this outline literally at the back of a drawer. And Lisa, when the pictures in it, Lisa remembered taking the pictures, and she forgot about the project. So they found this, and the family came to me, the Henson Company, and said, would you be interested in writing and directing this? And I said, oh my gosh, what an honor. I mean, I worked with both Jim and Jerry, and that would be such a blast. So I wrote an outline, about a 22-page outline, turning into a 2-hour TV movie special. And the two things I did was I didn't make it a musical because I thought, A, that racks up the budget a bit more, and I think it makes them a bit too cute, if you will. I think it feels more like a little kid's special.
Right.
And I wanted it to be more like, I said like kind of E.T. or Gremlins without being dark, but more like a family film that had music in it, but not songs and cute little numbers.
Right.
And so I wrote the outline, and then the company and I started pitching it around. It just became apparent quickly that the best place to do it was Canada. And the thinking at the time was to get Canadian funding or Canadian tax breaks. We found out that it couldn't be written and directed by an American. It had to be one or the other. So they asked which I would rather do. I said, well, I'd rather write it because I don't have to go anywhere. And they came back 2 weeks later and said, oh, we found out if you write it, then it can't be Canadian because it has to be created by Canadians or written. So if you want, you'll get to direct it. And I'm like, okay, I'll take directing then. So a great writer who we were friends with, a guy named Tim Burns, wrote for about 1.5 years, 2 years. He had to have heart surgery in the middle, so it delayed it a bit. But he's fine. But he wrote the first drafts, and then we were pitching it around, and Lifetime got very interested, and they brought it to Mary Steenburgen, who really loved it, loved the idea, and wanted us to do a rewrite to make it more tailor it for her. It was a bit broader than the character Matt Klein. So we did that, and there was a new writer was brought on, and he rewrote it. And instead of being shot on the East Coast, we had to shoot it on the West Coast up in Vancouver because of tax breaks and whatever. So ultimately, we made it last year, and it's fun. I'm really proud of it. It was a fun movie, and it was kind of an honor to be chosen to do it. And we made creatures that were sort of halfway between what the originals were and more quote-unquote realistic. I said, if you saw it in a zoo, you might believe, they didn't look so cartoony or Muppety that you'd think, well, that's obviously fake. So they kind of look like mutated raccoons or something between a raccoon and a mole rat, I guess. But with a lot of character and personality. And that's how the show came about.
It's a fantastic show. If you guys have not seen it, you really need to find it. It's available out there on Amazon. And
yeah, you can. Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon, or you can just watch it on Netflix or Amazon Video. Yeah. And I think iTunes, too, has it.
Yes, iTunes. I saw it on iTunes.
Yeah.
And then they'll air it every year on a Lifetime around Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Nice. Well, we're just about out of time. Kirk, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We're definitely going to have to invite you back again.
Oh, thank you. It was great. Well, thanks for
I know. We enjoyed you, and I know the listeners just were having a blast hearing you, so.
It was fantastic, and we really need to get those movies made. So
I agree. All right.
Let's get on it, Kirk.
Well, we'll just change it to the muffins, and it'll be.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Start a case. Well, thanks, you guys. It was great meeting you digitally and or electronically or whatever, virtually.
Absolutely.
And good luck with your show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure having you. It was a pleasure having you.
Take care.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, guys, that was Kirk, our Thatcher, and we're so pleased to have had him join us tonight on Magical Day Radio. Our first guest. And, gosh, Jerry, the second show's already over.
Can you believe that? We knocked the second one right out of the park. Can you believe that?
We did, and I really enjoyed that. We are definitely going to have to reschedule him.
Yes, have a part 2, let him continue. I mean, there were so many questions I wanted to ask him, and an hour just really went by fast. It was great stories. I really loved the stories that he shared with us. It's fantastic. So, yeah. Wow,
that was a blast. Well, I want to make sure that I thank everyone, those in the chat room, our listeners everywhere as well. Just a shout out to Disney Chris. Chris is going to be one of our guests in the future. He's got an unbelievable website. I'll share that on the link on our Magical Day Radio Facebook page. I need you guys to do us a favor and hop on Facebook, look up Magical Day Radio, and give our show a like. That way you can see the direct link to the show. You'll never miss it. We'll keep you updated. We post all kinds of fun stuff on there, including information on Jerry's website, which is Theme Parkology, and all his amazing documentaries, new, old, anyone that's available. Jerry, you want to talk on that just a tiny bit?
Yes, don't forget to go to www.themeparkology.com, where I produce documentaries on theme parks, attractions, characters, legends, and animators. And they're great documentaries. They're available on my site, and there's also news and information on the site, what's coming, Disney news, things around the world, that type of thing. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. Feedback is always welcome. www.themeparkology.com.
Absolutely. And now next week, you, Jerry, know personally our guest is going to be James Presley.
James Presley, a good friend of mine. He's actually doing the music right now as we speak on the Tiki Room that's coming out in July. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully he'll share some great secrets and topics, and hopefully maybe even give a documentary away or two, and we'll see.
That's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. And also, you guys, pretty soon we're going to be releasing the Magical Day Radio website, which was built by our very own Jerry Cornell, which I can't thank him enough for doing that. That was a lot of work.
Oh, no problem. It's gonna look great, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, we want to thank our producer, Mark, and Vegas Productions, and all the other networks that simulcast us and replay our show. We're going to have a podcast available for you guys shortly on show number 2, and looking forward to having you guys join us next week. Thanks again for listening, you guys, and have a great night.
This has been Magical Day Radio with your hosts, Don Short and Jerry Cornell. This was a Dragus production syndication. Magical Day Radio was created by host, public relations, and social media director, Don Short. Designs, websites, and sounds created by host and graphic design producer, Jerry Cornell. Special thanks to Theme Parkology. Magical Day Radio is not associated with the Walt Disney Company, its affiliates, or subsidiaries. All copyrighted media is used under journalistic fair use for commentary and educational purposes only. Please join us on Facebook at Magical Day Radio. Thanks for listening and have a magical day.